Hello, and thank you for watching. My name is Bradford Roberts, Principal Broker, Founder, and Owner of TR Realty in the Las Vegas area. After watching this video, please be sure to like it as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel. Download the pertinent handouts for this video by clicking the link in the comments below. Now let's get started. This video is entitled Class 4 Seller Excellence, and this segment is entitled Setting the Price. The first thing that we need to talk about to arrive at setting a price is the construction of a CMA. What is a CMA? CMA stands for Comparative Market Analysis. Comparative market analysis. I am aware that a lot of real estate agents use the term CMA and the term comps interchangeably. They're absolutely not the same thing. Even our association sometimes refers to comps and CMA as being synonymous. They are not synonymous. I want to talk about the importance of constructing a really fantastic CMA and how instrumental that can be in your career. In my opinion, when you go out on a listing appointment, you're meeting with a prospective seller who is probably meeting other agents as well. In fact, most sellers meet with a minimum of 3 agents before they make a decision which agent they would like to hire. For me, this is like a job interview. And I think you'll find that a third of the people or fewer will make a decision right there on the spot to hire you, to sign your paperwork, and get everything started. Most people, like I said, will interview other agents. They'll think about it. They'll talk to family. They'll talk to friends. They'll do some internet research. So just like a job interview, if you go and you meet with a prospective employer, because that's really what a seller is, right? Our prospective employer. When we go on a job interview, we bring something with us, don't we? We bring something that we call a resume. While you're having FaceTime with a prospective employer, he or she is engaged and listening to you and asking questions, but you know the minute you walk out of the door, that prospective employer is going to forget so much. Probably going to forget your name, where you worked before, where you went to school, how many years of experience, what kind of technology skills you have. So that's why we have a resume. We have a resume as a physical reference that the prospective employer can hang on to, and later that day, the next week, whenever they're making a decision, narrowing down their choices of who should be offered the job, they're going to go back to the resume. So when you're applying for a job, you have to have a fantastic resume. No typos, no mistakes, laid out beautifully, professionally, maybe some nice colored paper, something that really separates you from the other job seekers. Folks, when you go on a listing appointment, you are at a job interview. And considering the fact that so few people will hire you on the spot, it is critical that we bring with us a fantastic CMA. And I want to tell you right now, get ready to write this down, how I think your CMA should be prepared. The very first thing that you should have in your CMA is a cover page. And the cover page should have a prominent TR Realty logo, as well as your name and all of your contact information and your photo. People remember faces longer than they remember names. So that's why we want to put a really nice professional photo right there on the cover of the CMA. So as I mentioned, it should have your contact information. That includes your phone, your fax, your email, your website if you have one, links to your social media, your license number, your public ID number, and any advanced designations that you might have, such as an ePro, an SFR, a GRI, a CRS, those kinds of things. All of that should be right there on that cover page for the CMA. So once again, from the top, the TR Realty logo, your name, your photograph. all of your contact information, including email, phone, fax, your license number, which comes from the division, your public ID number, which comes from Las Vegas Realtor Association, links to your social media, and any advanced designations. That is page 1. And when I say page 1, yes, I'm talking about a physical thing, not something that you email, but something that you literally hand to a prospective seller, that they can leave it on their coffee table, they can show it to their friends and family, and they have something to reference. The second page of your CMA should be your biography. I don't care if you just started in real estate, you still have a biography. And the vast majority of people have brought skills from previous jobs into the world of real estate. So the second page should be your biography, and that should include any additional languages that you speak. That is something that's really important in today's world. The third page of your CMA should be any positive reviews that you have had. And this is why in class 1, I talk about how important it is to get those positive online reviews. And I also mentioned in class 1 how positive reviews can be used as testimonials. This is exactly what I'm talking about. So if you've been smart enough to get people to go to Yelp, to Google, to the TR Realty website, to Zillow and other places and post positive reviews, now you can take those positive reviews and include them in your CMA. Remember, people enjoy doing what other people do in many cases, right? So when we have the testimonials and somebody's going on and on about you, it makes someone else want to hire you as well. So page 3 would be your positive reviews. Page 4 of the CMA should be the TR Realty biography. And you can take that right off of our website. You should be proud of the company with which you are affiliated. We are an absolutely fantastic powerhouse organization, one of the biggest in the state of Nevada. You should be happy, and the TR Realty biography should be an important part of your CMA. The very next page of your CMA should be TR Realty positive reviews. So again, feel free to get those off of our website, our Yelp page, our Google, our Zillow, wherever you happen to go. TR Realty has absolutely fantastic reviews. They're real, they're credible, and they will make you look good in front of a customer. So take some of the ones that you think work for you the best and make those part of your CMA. The next thing in your CMA is what we call a property profile. A property profile is something that I discussed in some detail in my Class 2 video series, Real Estate Behind the Scenes, specifically the title and escrow segment. Because in that video, I talk about the fact that the title company will gladly provide to you at no cost something called a property profile. Property profile has a lot of information on the property. It has things like sales information, tax records, neighborhood demographics, those kinds of things. Get that from the title company, make it a part of your CMA. Next in your CMA should be the comps. So again, comps are an important part of the CMA, but comps are not the whole CMA. A lot of real estate agents will meet with a seller, they'll bring some sheets they printed out from MLS with some comps, they'll hand those to the customer and think they left a CMA. That is a far cry from a CMA. But comps are an important part of the CMA, and this is the place in the CMA where I think those comps belong. And in a minute, I'm going to circle back and I'm going to tell you how I think you should actually do the comps. And lastly, in your CMA, the very last thing should be a separate page where we put in writing, of course, our estimate of value. I know that the vast majority of real estate agents will marry a number. When the seller says, how much do you think I should list for? Agents will come up with a number. I think it's a mistake. I think that we should give a range. And that's what I recommend we put on the last page. The range
should vary somewhere between 5 and 10% differential from the low to the high point of the range. Why a range? Why not a number? Well, one thing, as a real estate professional, it gives you some wiggle room when you're out there talking with your seller. Every seller in the world thinks he has the best house in the neighborhood, and he's going to have all kinds of reasons why his property is more valuable than the guy down the street. Here's what I would explain to my seller. There's a reason that I gave you an estimate value in a range and I didn't give you a specific number. There are two things, Mr. Seller, that I did not know before I met with you today. One, I did not know the condition of the interior of the property. That's not something you can find in the tax records, right? So I didn't know if the property has been upgraded. I didn't know if you're including appliances. I don't know if we've got brand new paint and brand new carpet, or maybe we've got paint from the Reagan administration still in the property. I didn't know the condition of the property. And the second thing I didn't know before we met today, Mr. Seller, is I didn't know your motivation. I didn't know if you've got to get out of this house immediately, or if you're willing to take the time that the market requires to get the top price for your house. So based on not knowing the interior condition, based on not knowing your motivation, I've come up with a range. And folks, if you're going to come up with a range, you're going to do your homework very, very carefully, then you're going to stay in that range. If you do your comps and you do your homework and you think that a house should sell somewhere between $245 and $270, as an example, the seller says he wants to list for $350. Why would you allow yourself to be influenced? Again, it might feel good to walk out with that listing agreement today, but chances are you're going to fail. Chances are your sign is going to sit in that yard for months. All the neighbors are going to know how you failed to sell that house. That seller could go to social media and other places and tell people how you failed as a real estate agent. You're going to be held responsible when that property doesn't sell. And as I said already, success or failure with a listing begins right at the listing appointment. So take the time to put together a beautiful CMA, maybe a plastic cover. I know it's a little bit old school, but most agents won't take the time or care to do it. When you do, you're going to stand out from those other job applicants. Not job applicants, I'm sorry. I should say listing agents, right? Although it is the same thing. Now, I said I would circle back and I would talk about how I recommend to do comps. Most real estate agents will look at two categories of comps. They look at actives, meaning properties that are sitting on the market, and they look at solds. Active listings we call fantasy because that's just somebody's number that they've come up with. Solds are reality. That's a property that we can use as a true comp because that is a price that was actually achieved in the marketplace. Most real estate agents overlook a valuable third category of comps that they should be running, and that is expireds. Expired comps will give us our glass ceiling. In other words, if the house across the street is the same basic house and they couldn't sell for X amount of money, how could you list a property for X plus? It just doesn't make any sense. And remember, when you're doing your comps, to always look at the seller credits. You can't just look at the top of the listing and say, oh, this house sold for $325, there's my comp. You probably have to go all the way down the bottom of the MLS to where it says if the seller contributed anything to the buyer. If you've got a property that sold at $325 and the seller gave $10,000 to the buyer for his closing costs, you've got a $315,000 comp. So if you want to do this business correctly, you'll take the time to look at those seller concessions. Standard criteria for running comps tell us to go back up to 6 months in time and not further geographically than 1 mile away from your subject property. Those two criteria need to be amended depending on market conditions. if you've got a really, really hot market where properties are selling very, very quickly, well, something that sold 6 months ago is ancient history. Conversely, if you've got a very, very slow market, you might have to go back 8 months or 12 months even in time. And when it comes to the criterion of distance, often appraisers use the 1 mile limit. However, if you're in a very rural area, you might need to go 2 miles or 5 miles or 10 miles to see comps. And the other way around, if you are doing comps in a condo building, you want to stay in that building, right? Going a mile away is going to tell you something completely different. Now, in preparation for this video, I have asked our association to put together kind of a cheat sheet, if you will. I know a lot of you watching this video have not yet done comps or not done a lot of comps. So you might struggle with a way to do it. I'd like to bring your attention to the very first handout for today's class, which is the comp instructions. I'd like to remind you, this is not from TR Realty, so please excuse the format. It is not ours. It's not something we can control. Rather, this was given to us by Las Vegas Realtors to give to you just as kind of a guideline to run your comps. And of course, if you are struggling with comps, if you're just not finding a lot of properties around your subject property, your plan B is to talk to the seller about doing an appraisal. Yes, an appraiser costs money. They charge, typically several $100s to do an appraisal, but it is almost always money well spent. And in my opinion, agents should never pay for that appraisal. I know there are some real estate school instructors who teach that strategy, but I believe it is the seller who's going to benefit financially from the sale. Therefore, it is the seller who should invest in doing that appraisal. And of course, in commercial real estate, we always want to encourage the seller to do an appraisal. Sellers often confuse upgrade with personalization. So you might go out and talk to a seller who tells you how he spent $40,000 on the most elaborate, gorgeous, pink velour wallpaper that you've ever seen in your life. This is imported from Italy. It is just magnificent pink velour wallpaper. And the seller might be under the impression that his house is now worth $40,000 than the house next door because he, quote, upgraded the wallpaper. Folks, pink velour wallpaper is probably not an upgrade for most people. So that is what we would call a personalization. And a lot of sellers think that when they spend money on their property, they should automatically recover that money when they sell it. That is typically not the case. Upgrades rarely recover the cost of installing those upgrades in the first place. Some things have a good return on investment, like kitchen, cabinets, countertops, those kinds of things typically have a good return on investment. Something like pink velour wallpaper, not so much. I also want to remind you when you're doing your comps that rooms that have been converted or changed, which is something you find in the older parts of town, may not be fully valued when it comes to an appraisal. So let's say we have, as an example, a 4-bedroom house sitting next to a 3-bedroom house where they took the garage and they converted that at some point to a 4th bedroom. Although both of those might technically be 4-bedroom homes, they have different evaluations. Original construction is always going to be valued higher than a home that has been rigged or modified in some way. The listing that we put in MLS must match the county tax records. You will often come across a situation where the tax records call the home, let's say a 4-bedroom home, but somehow the seller is convinced he has a 5-bedroom home. Well, there might have been a conversion, there might have been an error in the records or whatever, but if the county says it's a 3-bedroom home, we have to list as a 3-bedroom home. You're free to say what you wish in the remarks section of the listing, but we must list the property as per the tax records. So folks, bottom line, if the seller is not realistic, let another agent take the hit on his reputation. I have prepared for you a very interesting clause. So go ahead and pull out today's clause library, and I want to share with you some strategy that I like to use. Clause 4.01 says, seller hereby authorizes listing broker to reduce the listing price by X amount of dollars at each X day interval until such time as property is under effective contract. Why have I prepared this language for you? Because I believe that despite what I'm telling you, not to work with sellers who are unrealistic, many of you will. Many of you will allow yourselves to go out, be pushed around by the seller because you're too timid to stand up to him. So you're willing to take a listing that is grossly overpriced. I have a fail-safe for you. I have a plan B in this case, and that is the language that I just read to you. If you are going to allow yourself to take a listing that is outside of the comp range that you set for your meeting with the seller, in other words, overpriced, at least put this clause into the additional terms on the listing agreement. And that would allow you the flexibility to be able to adjust that price. When it comes to the clause, it says X amount of dollars at X time, right? So X amount of dollars, we need to use our heads here. If you're listing a property for $100,000, you're not going to do a price cut of 40 grand, right? That's not going to make any sense. And the other side of the coin is, if you're listing a property for $10 million, it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to change the price by $150, would it? So my suggestion is that when we make a price change, we go somewhere around 1% of the listing price. And then it says at X day interval. Well, depending on the circumstances, are we trying to sell this house quickly? You might want to change the price every 7 days or 10 or 15 days. And if you're not in any hurry, or the seller's not in any hurry, I should say, then maybe you want to change the price every 30 days or so. You certainly wouldn't want to change the price every 60 days on a 90-day listing agreement, would you? That wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. So we need to use our head when it comes to the amount we're going to change, the frequency we're going to change that price. But in my opinion, when you're going to take a listing that you know is overpriced, this is the language to use. This will preclude you from having to go back to the seller to have a difficult discussion about changing the price, to doing an addendum to the listing agreement. It's going to be painful all the time, every time you have to do it. That's one reason that agents don't do it. And they let that overpriced listing languish on the market because they're too afraid, they're too weak to go back and have that conversation with the seller. Well, folks, you can avoid that whole thing if you take my advice and you use this language now. And I should also mention, if you're going to take a short sale listing, this language should be standard procedure. I would never take a short sale listing without this clause in additional terms. Did you know approximately 60% of the listings in MLS are overpriced? I want to talk about the strategies that sellers will come up with, because they're always reinventing the wheel. Let's talk about the strategy of listing low to attract attention. I know you're going to meet this seller. He's going to say, hey, let's do this. Let's list really, really low so we can get a bidding war going on the property. We're going to put it on the market. We're going to get 100 interested buyers, and then we can drive the price up from there. Folks, that is a terrible, ridiculous, stupid strategy for the seller. And I want to caution you as a real estate professional, it is both a licensing violation and an ethical violation. It is false advertising. If you list a property for an amount of money that you know the seller is not willing to accept, you are in violation. Don't do it. And I want to talk about the other ridiculous strategy. And you're going to meet this seller too. And he's going to say, well, let's start at this number. We can always reduce the price later. Sure, you can reduce the price later. Tick tock, tick-tock. The listing is sitting, the days on market are ticking, the property is getting stale. Your competitors are now listing other properties that are going to come on the market and they're going to get sold. Yours is sitting. And as time passes, there's going to be less and less interest in your property. Another ridiculous strategy. Folks, remember this. Value is a market factor. It doesn't matter how much the seller wants to get. It doesn't matter how much the seller needs to get. When the seller tells you, well, I have a first mortgage in this amount, and I have a second mortgage in that amount, and I have to pay off my car loan and my credit cards and put my daughter through college, it doesn't matter how much money he needs to get. And here's one more thing to remember. It doesn't even matter what he paid for the property. That was a different day, a different time, different market conditions. He could have been the world's best negotiator and gotten it cheap, or he could have been the world's worst negotiator and he was completely taken advantage of by the seller when he bought the property. So what he wants, what he needs, what he paid, all out of the equation and completely irrelevant. The only thing that matters is the market today. And that brings up one more thing I want to discuss in this video, and that is known as the principle of substitution. The principle of substitution says, given no substantial trade-off in quality, it is rational to replace one item with another based on a cost advantage. In other words, when most of us go into a convenience store to grab a cola, we see a red one sitting next to a blue one. Well, most of us have a preference. We like the red cola or we like the blue cola. However, when you see a price difference, 10 cents, 25 cents, 50 cents, $1, you might be willing to shift away your loyalty and go with the cost advantage, right? So the principle of substitution, given no significant trade-off in quality, most people will choose based on a cost advantage. Let's bring that into the world of real estate. Let's say we have two houses side by side, same year built, same square footage, same view, same general condition. One is listed for X, the other is listed higher at a price of Y. Chances are that property for X is going to sell before the property Y sells. People will choose based on the cost advantage. In real estate, it's more complicated than that. We look at, well, this one has a pool, yeah, but that one has a two-car garage. This one's including the appliances, yes, but that one has been professionally landscaped. So there are systems of pluses and minuses that people will use to calculate what they think a property is worth. But to keep this point simple, if the two properties are pretty much the same, the one at the lower price is going to sell first, and that is something that you absolutely have to deal with when your seller wants to list high. Basically what's going to happen is he's going to put that house in line with all the other listings on the market in the area, and when you look at the days on market for the ones that have not yet sold, you better be prepared that yours is probably going to take longer.
I would like to thank you for watching this video. I hope it was informative for you. If you are licensed with another brokerage in Southern Nevada and would like to talk with me, please text me or visit our website. See you next time.